How about now? Hey, let's try this. Boop.
How
Boop.
about now?
Oh,
Hey,
there we go.
let's try this.
Alright, let's get rid of this.
Boop. How about now?
Oh,
Hey,
there we go.
let's
Alright, stop the preview and stop the echo. Okay, let's try this again. Welcome to the video version of the Summoning Hour. I wanted to do this because I believe that if I really want to hit my content quota per episode of the Summoning Hour, I need to do more content. And to do that, I think video is a huge component of that. And I really do want to get guests on here so that you can have that personal connection with someone on the other side, especially as I'm interviewing either game devs or college esports athletes or producers or directors and all that. And I actually tried this last week with my interview with Western Michigan University, but I recorded on Skype with my phone and it looked great because I saw them on my phone. It was perfect. It was both of them on the screen. But when I saved that conversation and it came back and I got a chance to preview it, it had my face on one half and their camera about halfway cut off, and both of them were outside of the frame. So I was getting like half of each of their shoulder. Uh, not exactly what I wanted, so that's cool. Um, but so if you are new to, oh sorry, bumped my mic. If you're new to what I do, I run a podcast called The Summoning Hour. Uh, And with that, I interview game developers, and I've been recently interviewing collegiate esports teams, clubs, and mostly I've been working with either a faculty member, someone who's been like a esports coordinator, or it's been the president or director of the game of the esports club, and that's been a student working to organize the club. So if you actually scan that QR code that's up over in the top left corner, you see it flash in, flash out. That's a QR code to the podcast, and it'll take you to a link where you can listen to that. I'd encourage you to download the Anchor.fm app and leave me any feedback that you feel about the podcast, and we'll go from there. I am looking for a lot of feedback, so if you have any particularly strong feelings one way or another, I would appreciate it if you have feedback. Now you can leave feedback here because chat is recorded. You can leave feedback through the Twitch, or not the Twitch, the Anchor.fm app. You can leave it on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. All of them are at Warlock Recall. So feel free to do that. But I want to get back into why I'm doing this cast specifically, especially this late at night, and with this coming up, um, and where I feel like the podcast is going. I've been dabbling more with the collegiate scene as esports is ultimately where I want to be, and I have interviewed a lot of game developers. So let's see, I'm on episode 24, and I think 20 of my 24 podcasts have, or 19 of the 24 have been with other game developers or people who are in various roles. So actually, no, let me think. May was esports, so maybe five of my 24. This will be 24. Five of my 24 have been esports focused. And I want to make that more of a highlight going forward, just because the collegiate scene is massive. I mean, when Arizona State told me that their esports club is 900 active participants, when GCU told me that they broke 400, and the week prior they were just at 300, when Mississippi State tells me that they're at 300 and they're getting support from faculty. And I mean, they just ran an Egg Bowl, which is Ole Miss versus Mississippi State University, and it's a long, storied rivalry between the two colleges. And here they were running the first ever Egg Bowl esports Egg Bowl, and that was exciting to see. This was also one of the first times where I had seen multiple games being used as scoring for who won the tournament. And so it was kind of like if you were to take the Olympics but make it mano a mano uh, across multiple events. And I thought that was really exciting, as it would test the breadth of skill across the club. And when you have a club of 300 to 400 people, you can actually vet that, you can actually build that. So collegiate space has a lot more to offer in terms of difference than what I think you'd see on the professional scene, just because teams are concise and well defined as this is your role, this is what we expect you to do, and it's limited to one game. Now, Splice is going off the rails and doing using their Halo roster as well for their Call of Duty roster, or at least one of them. So that's an exciting development all on its own. But the excitement for collegiate is that these students are student athletes. They are basically building their own production studios. And if that's going to pop up on every campus from the size of Arizona State University to the size of a local community college where it's just a small group of friends or a small group of people just wanting to get started, I think that that's an interesting ecosystem to be a part of. And if you listen to my conversation with who was it? I believe it was Grand Canyon University, where I made the observation where this is the esports land grab in terms of collegiate participation, because I mean we all know that esports is growing massively and incredibly fast on the professional scene. And when we are doing that, like we're seeing more sponsors come in, we're seeing more tournaments come up, we're seeing more player participation, and like you're seeing more almost shows come out from the companies themselves. So Splice is putting on new editions and new shows just to try and drum up more community aspect. Complexity is doing the same thing. Optics does a lot of that. I mean, Hector does that all by himself, basically. You're seeing Nadeshot really get into it with 100 Thieves. Um, but what you don't see is that in the collegiate space is that they're running the show. All the students are running the show, and they're driving it. They're the ones massively changing it, and they're defining things that those other groups don't have an opportunity to do so. And actually, you know what? I kind of lost my train of thought. Yeah, so that's that's good. That's not good. My bad. Um, let me try and go back to where I was. Oh, more shows. People are doing more shows to drum up community. Uh, because I mean these groups are starting to get more sponsorships and more money, and their professional esports is just growing insanely fast. I mean, 8 new Owl teams, even more professional teams showing up, more jobs and more investments and business deals have been made in the last 3 to 6 months than in like the 2 to 3 years prior. And we're starting to see many more what people call non-endemic um, investments being made. People are making brands that have no business or have had previously no business being in esports, because it was all hardware, it was all apparel, it was all very much gaming related. Now you're starting to see people who are on the outside coming in, and there's just a wealth of money coming in, and that's all well and dandy. That's all great, and I mean that's great for the professional scene. But if you take that step back and see where the communities are, every one of the collegiate scenes I've talked to, they talk about building that community first. And when you're talking about getting 300 to 400 students in front of sponsors, and where there isn't that organization like the NCAA creating all these guidelines and rules and restrictions and everything, it is even more massive of a land grab. This is the first time since, I'd say, football or baseball was introduced as a collegiate sport that all colleges are on the same level. I mean, colleges, when they were starting to incorporate more intramural sports or even school competitions from one school to another with baseball and football and tennis and the men's and women's sports of those times, it was an interesting time, but the bigger colleges always won out. And I think I mean, ultimately that's what led to the 4A, 3A size school and the divisioning of schools. But esports doesn't have that. Every school participates against every school. You have these natural divisions. You have the remake of the Pac-12 and the Big Ten and stuff like that. But then you have self-organizing leagues where it is these colleges that are figuring out these are the closest people I could play with. These are the ones that my team could travel to or they could travel to us. And it's creating those relationships that previously or on a traditional sports level couldn't have existed because they would be participating at two different quality bars, or they would already be a league competitor, so there would be no reason for them to actually compete. There's no context. There's no real contest there. But because esports is so accessible, and gaming is so accessible, you create these massive clubs. You're creating A teams, B teams, the competitive scene, the casual scenes. You're creating all of this. And one thing I've asked Marty Laser Chickens of Splice about is that will we see bigger rosters coming in the future for esports? And he says absolutely. I've asked multiple people, is scrims against other teams the actual way that people want to be practicing? I've gotten some mixed results. Some people kind of want to accept the way it is. Other people want to say no because they want to be able to keep their strategies close to their chests and practice with reliable people who aren't going to leak. I mean, there was a recent trouble, I believe it was in Heroes of the Storm, that caused problems. So being able to practice against and with people that you trust is a huge deal. And what these colleges are doing, they're giving their competitive teams the best chance to be even better. What having more access to other colleges is doing is giving all of these colleges the same opportunity to go forward and be successful. I mean, I hadn't even heard of Grand Canyon University, no offense, guys, until I started searching people out to talk to, and it was amazing to hear how far they had come. I mean, apparently they had finished. It was like eighth or ninth in the country in Overwatch. It's like these. If this would have been the March Madness in college basketball, you you would have written this team off long ago, early in the rounds, or you would have been surprised if they even made it, just because you didn't recognize the name. Because unless you're from the region, but like with my exposure to traditional sports, I hadn't heard of them. That's just the truth. And but now that they're participating at the eighth and ninth place overall, they have room to grow, and their college is behind them. Arizona State University, they won Heroes of the Dorm in 2017, I believe, or no, 2016, one of the two, 2017. Um, but they used, I guess, some of the winnings from that to create the esports theater or arena that they have there at ASU now. But the school isn't behind them. Now I go to Western Michigan University, and the president of the college is saying, this is a priority. We will fund this, from a single petition, and the school knowing that this is their opportunity to get more students to show up because they support esports, because they want a slice of that pie, because everyone sees esports growing. And so now, going back to the sizes and the divisioning of things, Every college now has that opportunity to say, we want some of that. We want some of that. And there's going to be talented players in those areas. So it's going to change so much knowing that they can compete against every other college. Get that through your processors and understand that every school can now participate against each other. There's going to be West regions. There's going to be East regions. There's going to be North regions. I mean, just like TESPA is done with Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm, the NACE is going to do the same thing. NACE is the National Association for College Esports, I believe. But now you're already seeing a split between those two because it's almost completely unregulated. There are some ruling guidelines per school about what a traditional sport is and uh, what a club intramural sport is, and so there's different things going on there. So there is a different level of understanding, but it's not it's not a driving force. The students are still driving everything. The students are still figuring everything out. Now, with NACE and TESPA, there are some guidelines, but I mean, look at the Egg Bowl. It's not a sanctioned event. It's just a cultural thing. And when you get stuff like that going on, you're going to have to, a lot of people are going to have to start questioning, do we want the NCAA coming in? Do we want to be a part of NACE? Do we want to be a part of TESPA? And that's interesting to me. That tells me that even the collegiate scene is 2 to 3 years behind the pro scene. And seeing how big the pro scene is, all the money that's coming in. I mean, think of the money that's going to be going into the college scene. I don't think the college scene is necessarily the path to pro because gaming is accessible and you can have some really talented players who are under 18, who are still in high school, who are in middle school. I mean, there was one of the I forget her title, but she's like a QA SDET or QA tester. I think she was an SDET at Bungie, and she is one of the test leads there. I can't remember her name, but she used to competitively play in MLG as a Call of Duty player with her brothers, and she was like 13 at the time when she was competing, and that's crazy, but there is no path to pro other than being really good. Now, games are starting to incorporate that path to pro and how they can farm that data. Like Overwatch, they have the whole book of data. They have everything that they need to say, here you go, draft your team. And they have reliable data and they can share that data with everyone. And that's being more common, I think. And I mean, fighting games, what was it? Not Immortal. It was the Injustice 2. They started putting more of that path to pro progression in their game itself. Crazy. And you're getting more of that. I mean, Fortnite introducing tournaments in client. Nice. Very nice. That's awesome. That's going to be great. Um, but there is no real dedicated path to pro. You can be whoever you want and you can make it there. With the collegiate scene, you're seeing the production houses come out. You're seeing the content coming out. You're going to see more of, well, I think what you're going to see is that there's going to be a number of colleges that excel at the content coverage, and that's going to be more of what they are known about. I don't know if programs or scholarships will be made for that. I potentially, I mean, esports camera work, esports production work. I mean, who was it? There was a college that just started a esports management uh, degree. Let me look that up real quick. What was that? Of course, I'm gonna have to go back to Twitter to find it, but regardless, there is now a degree for esports management. Now I can't let it go. I'm going to have to look it up. Nuts. Becker College. Yeah, esports management degree. Learn how to set up a stream. Learn to set up a production. Learn to what it's like to manage a team. I mean, hey, that has some fundamental great skills into it. Management, awesome. Business management, awesome. Budgeting, probably helpful. If it was an online course, I'd probably be taking it just because it would catch me up to where all these students are going to be in 2 to 3 years, and esports is going to have taken off by then. And all the other production houses are going to be massive. All the number of events going on, massive. The number of reporters, journalists, videographers, photographers, everything going to be massive. The fundamental structure of an esports tournament, an esports broadcast, an esports program going to be fundamentally changed in 3 to 5 years. Fundamentally. That's what I believe. And it's going to be because of the collegiate scene. That's it. That's why. Esports is going to fundamentally change because of the collegiate scene. Now, Jason Lake, CEO of Complexity, I had asked him earlier today about what he thought about, or him and a couple of other CEOs thought about the collegiate scene, and I'll have to check out his video once it's published of the Complexity press conference video, which just subscribe to Complexity on YouTube and you'll get it sooner than later. His direct quote is, "In short, the exponential growth is fantastic and will continue." What those colleges are participating and creating is a massive ecosystem for creating job opportunities, for filling those job opportunities, for driving what esports can actually be. Esports up to this point has been only accessible to those who made it already, either through a stream or they were caught up in like the first pickups of a game, and it was like you had your shot basically. Dota and League are exceptions. Counter-Strike kind of being kind of the grandfather of it all. I mean, StarCraft was always 1v1, and I mean that thing started it all essentially. So you can give kudos to that, but like Counter-Strike and StarCraft are the ones that lit that first wave in and kind of started the ball rolling and started people thinking, oh, we can support one player or a few players, 5 players. And it wasn't until League had its foundation set up and its infrastructure set up that it really got going. Counter-Strike had its own weird thing going, and it's been supported the same way for a long time. So they figured out what that community needed and wanted really early. And everyone else is catching up. And I think you're going to see kind of that next iteration in the next 3 to 5 years. Yeah, and that's why I'm focused on the collegiate scene, especially on the podcast. I want to get more interesting stories. I mean, what was it? It was the blah 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 director of esports at executive director of esports at Arizona State. Yeah, it was Arizona State, and he hadn't played a game until his freshman sophomore year of college because he was playing traditional sports. The area supports that more than playing games. They were doing a lot about family and physical activity. Totally fine, and that's what that region is all about. I mean, you heard a similar story from Michael Udall. But as soon as he was injured, the executive director
of Arizona State, as soon as he was injured, he had to figure out something else to do. That's just like Glaurung of Tempo Storm and several other Heroes of the Storm teams. And I mean, I just heard the same story from Western Michigan University, the president of the esports club and one of the League of Legends players on the team. He was playing football and he was expected to kind of ride off of that and see where that took him. And then he got injured and he couldn't play football anymore. Suddenly, traditional sports don't look as appealing because once you're hurt, you are done. Now, that's not to say that you can't get hurt playing esports or anything like that, because you can. I mean, you neck, wrist, shoulder, elbow, uh, back, all that, all that kind of stuff. Carpal tunnel, all of that stuff can flare up and be detrimental. I mean, I think it was Old Man Fear who had carpal tunnel, and he was battling with that for a long time. Now, I mean, thankfully, now that esports are really taking off and there's some funding behind it, or they're being sponsored by various teams that have access to resources, sports medicine is getting a lot better, and there's a lot more attention being made for ergonomics and better physical treatment. One thing I can't wait for is when these teams stop doing like 14 to 16 hour scrimmage and then go play solo queue 14 to 16 hours a day. Like, it's not healthy. It's not good for the sport. It's not good that we burn people out that fast. And we got to be thinking longevity in 10 to 20 years when I mean, not even, I don't even, I don't even know how many over 30 esports players there are. So you're looking at a lifespan of between what I would estimate to be between 18 and 25. 7 years to be pro, you can't retire off of that. Not unless you build a brand by off of you, unless you win championship after championship after championship, but that doesn't happen. That really doesn't happen. So there's no real way to have a sustainable future as an esports athlete, and you have to fall back on something else, just like a lot of professional athletes do. But a lot of those professional athletes also have a college degree. So it takes a special kind of person. I'm looking at Bakery of Team Dignitas because he was a phenomenal player for Heroes of the Storm. But then when he retired, he went to work for Dignitas. You don't hear about that happening with a lot of players. And that's definitely a problem. We have to be able to take people early in their career, mold them, and get them prepared for a career outside of that. I don't know how many casters are in like League of Legends or Dota who are former players. I imagine a few of them are. Probably the most notable ones are. But as we get more people who are used to casting, as we get college degrees, as we get people who are really just invested in doing that from a young age. I mean, there's kids who are 5, 6, and 7 who are growing up watching League of Legends. They will know how to be a sportscaster by that time. And so that's a given. Now, to take that person and grow them into being into the esports scene, I mean, that's 10 to 13 years away. But in that time, it's all going to move forward. Everything's going to get bigger. Everything's going to get better. And we're looking at the beginning life cycle of people getting involved with esports and that post cycle. So we have to take care of our players as they are right now and make sure that they have a future and make sure that this is actually a sustainable career one way or another. And our teams have to take care of them. That's a huge deal. But the collegiate scene very much is no longer about the degree that you're getting. It's all nice, but that experience of running a production or being a part of a production, that's going to be the money. That's the experience everyone wants. It's the equivalent of getting a job in the games industry after having been a successful modder, or even just putting together a mod and saying, I shipped it. I did it. I put it out there. It got 2 downloads. Doesn't matter. The fact that you built it from scratch, you tested it, you thought about your process, you were able to think about problems that someone who's never been a designer before did, and you did it. Now, take a step back. Oh, you figured out how to run a camera rig in an audience. How many other opportunities do college students get to run a camera rig at a sporting event? I'm going to guess a big fat donut. That's what I'm going to guess. How many other students get to control the broadcasting system? Twitch, YouTube, whatever platform it's hosted on. Maybe it's on Restream like I am. How many students do you think get that opportunity for their sports, for their schools? I'm going to go with, again, a big fat donut. Over here, that one, donut. Unless it's esports related, because the students are in control. God, now I'm just amped up on how college esports can go. It's just too good. It is too good and it's too big, and no one is paying attention to it. TESPA, very slightly, they're trying to organize, trying to carve out their niche, get the schools involved in the games that they're hosting. But then you have NACE as well. I'm not saying they're on polar opposites or they have restrictions. I don't know. I haven't really spoken to either one of them, because not for lack of effort, but because I haven't gotten a response from them. So maybe you can pick on them via social media and say, hey, you should talk to this Warlock or Call guy and give him a shot, see what he has to say, see what you want to tell him to tell his listeners of the podcast. So outside of that, it's a really exciting time for esports outside of professional. I think collegiate scene to me is by far more interesting. We know the progression of professional esports. More money, more advertisers, more teams, more. It's going there. We've already seen it. We've already seen where esports is going to go. It's going to be massive. Don't get me wrong, and I'm excited to see how big it gets. I'm excited to see how it takes over. But there's still pockets. I mean, like even in Seattle, it's not even on the radar. It's a blip. It's a like, oh, is that something? Nope, it disappeared again. That's Seattle, self-proclaimed second biggest game developer city in the country. Yeah, and there's little pockets here and there, fighting game community, all that, and that's it. Why? I don't know. I've made some conjectures that Seattle's just too expensive for a lot of places, startups especially, um, non-tech startups at least, and I don't think that there's been a lot of attention now with the new Key Arena coming on, the hockey team coming on, maybe bringing an NBA team back. Let's get some of those traditional sports athletes or former athletes investing in those franchises, and I bet you 2 to 3 years from now, Seattle has an Overwatch League team, and any other geo-located esports will be nearby. I mean, the Sounders picked up a player to represent them in the EMLS, so there is some murmurs here and there. So, not saying it's completely dead, but it is a little bare in comparison to like Texas and California. And I mean, I don't know anything about Philadelphia, but the fact that the Philadelphia Fusion or there's the new Washington D.C. Overwatch team, and it's like, why do they get a team before Seattle? I don't get that. I don't get it. I wish someone could tell me an answer. If you have an answer, feel free to let me know. Again, I don't need to plug that. You can listen to it at the end of the podcast. Yeah. So, yeah, as you can tell, I am super jazzed about doing esports and doing the collegiate scene, because there's got to be a lot of really interesting stories there, almost all entirely underdog stories, which is also pretty exciting. And I mean, if you followed me or if you know me, I get super into the Heroes of the Dorm competition, and my spreadsheets are going to be spicy this year. Spicy, my 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 spicy spreadsheets. They'll be so good. And I'll have to work with like someone like Critic Kitten, Critic Kitten. I don't know if I've actually really, yeah, Critic Kitten. Yeah, I always thought it was Critical, but then remembering it and trying to say it made me realize, no, it's just Critic. Hmm. Okay, Critic. Got it. Um, so that's where my focus on the podcast is, and I've pretty much gushed and just explained that to hell and back. So you get it now, and you get my perspective on a lot of esports as it is. So there you have it. And what we'll have to do from here is I need to start, I think, weaving a little more differentiation between my podcasts of the esports clubs. I would like to look at talking to more folks. There's a teacher of like a middle school esports team. Awesome. And he has a whole document about gamifying the classroom, which again I think is awesome and a great way to reach out to a generation that has been raised on video games, that will be raised on esports being the norm. Yeah. So there's that. So I want to reach out to the various aspects of non-professional esports and people who are doing more than just being a player or an organizer with that, and find some different disciplines in there, because I think that there's some interesting stories there. Heck, if I could get someone from the ASU faculty to tell me why they congratulated the ASU esports team on being the first generation of athletes with heart disease, I would love to talk that over, because that just gets me going. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. But in the meantime, the rest of my energy is going to be going towards a lot of content generation. I made a Facebook post about this earlier. The amount of content I do want to put out, the amount of content I want to put out, the amount of content I need to put out is going to be very quickly scaling beyond what I have the time to do as I currently do it. So I'm going to need help. That's really fucking cool to think that I've grown that far and I've realized how far I can take this, how far I can build this. And it's not just the need for scaling up my content, it's the need to have another core piece of what I provide. And moving forward, that's going to be building a community, which hence the stream. I need to be able to build that community. I need to be able to make more face-to-face contacts in bigger bulk. So whether that's me doing more with Heroes Hype, whether that's me doing more with my own community, say like Seattle Tekken of Seattle or Seattle Tekken, or the Overwatch group that's around here, I could be doing more with them as well. And that kind of ramps into, if you've been following me on Instagram, I can't wait to tell the story when I know it's a little bit more firmed in, or until there's a definitive answer on whether or not this is actually going to happen. But I haven't. I created an opportunity. I attacked for an opportunity, and it turns out I was right. Which just let me. Whew, it feels good. It feels good to have my perspective validated once again. But there is an opportunity there, and I know I'm going to have to spend time there, and that specifically is that next step in getting me more embedded with esports, getting me more embedded with management of a team, of a player, of a community, and that's where things are going to get exciting. I mean, really exciting if things work out the way that I'm hoping that they will. So I'm doing more of that, just more, 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 more. I found a couple more uh, music people for the podcast to provide that. I have a couple who are DJs, which I might be using their skills sooner than later, or at least inviting them out, seeing if things work out that way. So it's an interesting point where I have to be thinking about everything I'm doing. Is this right for my time? Is this right for me moving to into like esports production? Is this where I want to go? Is this how I want to build my reputation, build my experience, and give myself opportunity that way? And I mean, that's the fun of it. Like maybe in 10 years I'll have my own team. Maybe. We'll find out. And I'm going to work those 10 years for sure. I mean, just a little plug. I know Gary Vee follows me on Twitter. I hope he sees that, hey, I'm streaming. And I hope he checks this out because hopefully the passion comes through, the planning is coming through, and it's what I want. It's just what I want. So I need it. I'm finally figuring out what I need. Uh, which actually I'm gonna deviate a little bit. I wanted to talk a little pillars, a little what the vision is for like my team and everything. And I have a script prepared for that, and I've had that prepared for a long time. I need to be able to go back to that because I think since I wrote that, I think that was back in March when I wrote that, my perspective has changed. My own level of self-awareness has changed, and my goals have changed, or they've really just solidified and morphed a little bit. And there's some subtle distinctions that I really need to make sure that I nail before I talk about that. But over the course of the year, I've had some really interesting introspective thoughts about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and it's been a fun realization for me. Just a little, and this is going to be like my story. This is going to be my origin story. Um, I grew up in Air Force brat. We moved every 3 or 4 years, and that meant every 3 or 4 years, my whole social life or my social experience was changing dramatically, especially moving from one side of the country to another region to another. And basically, I had three consistent things: my brother, my parents, and video games. So, and sports. I guess four sports. I could always play sports, and this was SNES, Sega Genesis, NES, N64, early PCs, early internet gaming, which was mostly just TCP/IP or weird little games on AOL. Uh, you're lucky you don't have to remember that in case you didn't have to play games like that. Or Age of Empire on what was it, MSN Live? Oof. Or the Game Zone. Oh, oof, the pain, the agony. You don't even know. Um, but I had games and sports and my brother and my parents because we moved a lot and I didn't keep real close with friends. And so, I mean, kind of easy to progress and being decent at baseball, decent at soccer, easy to be invested in school and be successful at that. But what I didn't know was all those years of playing games and diving into it and reading like GameSpy at its height and just understanding release schedules, understanding what new iterations were coming out of games, understanding what new innovations were coming in with games, and just seeing it, analyzing it all the time, constantly. It made me realize, and this was a realization I had this year, but I've always known it, but I didn't really understand where it came from, and that was I don't know music. I cannot keep a rhythm. I cannot hear the difference between most notes. I certainly can't hold a tune humming or singing, and instruments just make my fingers look dumb. Like that's just the way it is. I gave that up because I wanted games more. I played sports. But when I wasn't playing sports, I was playing video games. That was it. Game over. Done. And so I gave up all this, all of that, all the other livelihood stuff. A lot of other people were like, I want to be in the friends clique. I want to be with the popular kids and stuff like that. That's fine if it floats your boat, but that wasn't for me. I tried several times. I tried being in the group, but it never worked out. Not here, or not in elementary school, not middle school, not high school, not college. And I've always lived by just a few close friends, not like a few close friends. That was it. It was like that was all I needed to be happy because I found happiness so in so many other ways. Um, but it was interesting to make that realization of like things like music just don't matter to me. I cannot recall band member names, and this is the same with traditional sports teams. I was never that invested where I needed to know the names. I needed to be part of that culture of like Seahawks, all that kind of stuff, especially out here. It's not important to me. Not at all. I'm having a hard time picking my team for esports as opposed to like the people I gel with most or the people I feel like I connect with most, the managers, the CEOs. It's like those are the people I want to get to know. And like I was saying, like I don't recognize band names or album names or song names or lyrics or anything like that because they were never important to me. I have tuned myself to video games, period. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. When I was going to college, I knew esports was coming. Or let me go back to high school. As soon as I heard about World of Warcraft, I knew it was going to be massive. Just knew it. Flat out, 100% bought in. It was my jam. This was back when the BattleNet forums were this black and neon green, like message, like cascading message board yuck. And it was just disgusting to try and keep track of everything. But I was on there. We were like, what's a warlock going to be? What's a death knight going to be? What about this? Can you do that? And how is that going to work? And I was selling my high school buddies on it. And we were going to be the trio of Providencia. We were going to rule the battlegrounds because we had this grandiose vision of like, this is where you're going to get known. This is how you're going to be awesome. And my brother and I were going to be epic in the arena and everything. Obviously, that didn't pan out. But that was how hard I was bought into it. And for the longest time, I was just super hardcore into it. But I knew WoW was going to be massive. I made that bet in 2004 or 2000, like 2002 when it was. I think that was the first time I heard about it. But I mean, I had the PC Gamer articles, and I was tracking it everywhere. I was obsessed with the opening cinematic when it came out. But after that, I knew esports was coming. Like I started hearing more about CS:GO. I was following like Fatality and the fighting game community, and it was all cool and fun. And it was just like, hey, that's cool. That I want to go play games, make some money, win a local tournament, earn $50 and some food or whatever. Um, but I knew that that was the direction things were going to be going in. And when I went to college, I actually found a sports psychology minor degree to go for. Now, if I wanted to graduate on time or in the timeline that I wanted, I had to give that up because at that point, my dream was to be a animator or a game artist, a concept artist. I mean, I was following Sons of the Storm with Samwise Didier, and I was like, yes, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. Turns out I'm a terrible artist. Just, I can get so far, but it wasn't for me. And the rest of it is I used that gaming knowledge that I had practiced for the previous 20 years, and that's what got me into testing. And that college degree of art let me make connections and learn how to communicate with artistic type or creative types. But all that studying and playing, it turned me into a designer. And now I walk the walk and I talk the talk with designers pretty much every day and have been for the last 10 years. And then just my own logistical, data-driven self, that's what made me great at QA. My familiarity with games made me great at QA. And the data-driven nature of myself has made me a great producer. And the management side of me, the competitive side of me, the person who was a captain, who was a motivational figurehead in the dugout, that's what makes me a good opportunity for coordinating projects and events and managing a roster and figuring out how I want to run a business. It's been crazy to have these realizations about myself. It's been eye-opening. It's been humbling to know that in 9 months this is where I've come. 9 months, I think. Or almost 9 months. My first podcast was in February. I had planned it in January, and I was going to take the dive. And going back to the idea of the pillars that I had, it's all changed. I have to be okay with that. I have to scrap it and start over. It's not that this has been a failure by any stretch of the imagination. It's just I've changed. I've grown. I have self-awareness. I have an appreciation for my own, what's the word I'm looking for? For my own, now I can't think of the word that I want, but it's for what I want. What I want has changed. And my effort has to change to match that new vision. And I'm excited for that. I'm really, really, really excited for this. And I get to figure it out. I love problem solving. Problem solving has been a part of gaming for me. And for those who poo-poo esports, well, get over yourselves. For anyone who thinks that, I really wish I had some water. For anyone who thinks that it's too late, it's not. For anyone who thinks that they can't stream, well, here I am streaming. I've made a podcast. I never thought I would run a podcast. I never thought I would have a stream going, or like a successful stream. It's not successful yet by any means, but I have a plan to make it that way. I have a vision to help it make it there. And it's exciting for me. And I hope that anyone who finds this, they find it exciting too. My focus with esports definitely hasn't taken away from my passion of making games, and that's still part of the vision too. It's part of the plan. Just like a few other ideas I've got rattling around up here that I want to save for that time when it's right. But it'll be right. I'm making every step to make it right. And with that, I think I've spent my hour-long podcast gushing about esports in college and briefly kind of summarizing where I'm at. The last 8 months, we'll say 8 months of podcasting and talking to so many people and listening to folks like Gary Vee and reading resources like that and like manager tools, podcasts, and all of that has just really been filling me up and giving me the ammunition that I needed to really believe in myself, give me some more confidence. I mean, it's been weird, but it's been right. It's been right that I've been going through this. And that logo, this logo, you're going to see a whole hell of a lot more of it from me. Might even be changing the podcast logo to be more, this is the podcast. But this logo right here, that is the future. That's my future. And for anyone who wants to join me along the way, it could be your future. Opportunities are there. I'm taking them. I'm making them. And that's all I really can do. And if in 10 years you're seeing that logo somewhere in an arena somewhere on some jackets or a shirt, sleeve, a spray, a in-game item, you'll know where it originated. And I'm hoping that this document exists when it gets there. So, as I sign off, please follow me on social media. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, here on Twitch, YouTube, or Mixer. It's all Warlock Recall. I think Twitch is just Recall. I think Mixer is all just Recall as well. No, Mixer is Warlock Recall. YouTube is Warlock Recall. Twitch is just Recall. Rakaul. And follow me there in any of those places and send me feedback. Comment on any of the content that I put out. And let me know how I can help you. I still want to help people get into the games industry because I love this industry. I love making games, and it's been everything that I've wanted it to be. So I hope you find what propels you there, and I'm happy to help. Let me know how I can help you. Yeah. Wow. I can talk for an hour. That is another surprising bit for me. I mean, I did it during the summer, but it still surprises me that I have that much to say and that I'm that excited about it. I don't get excited about much. So, I mean, with that, that's all I got to say tonight. Thank you for listening. I hope you'll tune in next time. And I hope to have more interesting guests and stories and interviews for you going forward. Until then, later.